Good evening, everyone. This is Tala with Drive-thru Therapy. Thank you guys so much for joining me tonight on another episode. And as always, I'm grateful for your support. And tonight, what we're going to do is talk about forgiving and learning. Instead of forgiving and forgetting, I need you to think about forgiving and learning. Think of the earth and you in it as a school, and that interactions that you have really are meant for the highest good. And if we think that way, then nothing goes to waste about our past and about the heartbreak and the suffering that we've experienced. It's important to do this work because without this, then this concept of my past suffering being meaningless is not useful, and it eventually will deteriorate you mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. It'll take you down. So that's why we want to make sure that tonight you are getting to a place of peace, inner peace, when it comes to forgiveness and forgiving a people or a situation. And more importantly, how we do that a lot easier is by learning from it. I want everyone to first start to think that they themselves are not perfect. The reason why we might create a resentment towards somebody to begin with is by stating that I would never do this and how dare they do this because I would never, ever do this. Now, this specific thought pattern will get us in trouble because it implies that I am perfect and righteous and I'm not capable of making a mistake or feeling a sense of weakness towards my emotions and reacting based on, feelings of anger or resentment, which is not true. We are all human. Hence, the impulses and the urges are all going to be there in each person. So for me to separate myself from another human being and say, oh, I would never do that, how dare they do that, would be really tricky because it's not a fact. So I am capable of anything human. So are you. Good news. This will help us get into forgiveness a lot quicker. Again, if I separate myself from this other person and I tell the story as if they are a villain and I am a victim, unfortunately, this is not useful. It'll be very difficult for us to forgive a person, a situation, and be able to move forward. Now, I recently had an interaction with a client, which is why this episode came about. I've been reflecting on it. Well, if she is not aware of this, and probably a lot more people are not aware of this. And I wasn't aware of this until it was time. So I wanted to kind of talk to you about this. And it came from a conversation I had with a client recently regarding her relationship with one of her parents. And she holds a strong resentment towards that parent. After processing the resentment, and I think it's important to do that, processing the resentment, understanding it better, right? Because we can't really look at it without a sense of understanding. And understanding doesn't mean understanding my part, but also understanding what really occurred. So let's say I've been betrayed by a friend. I mean, under the right circumstances, I'm capable of doing that as well. It's possible. But that's what occurred. This friend may have betrayed me and they did something that is not able to be taken back and may have had even significant results. But on my end, if I'm choosing to move forward, then I have to forgive. Now, this is important, okay? Because this is what this client kind of taught me that people didn't know about, which is just because I forgive does not mean I did not learn from the past, learn about the individual, and in turn want to protect myself from future interaction. I can forgive someone. That means I can release my resentment towards them. It's forgiven. It will not be retaliated against in no way or held against them. However, it does not mean that I have not seen this part or experienced this interaction with them. So I have to use what I know. This does not mean that I have to hold on to my anger. And that's what people usually think they need to do. They need to hold on to their anger so they can protect themselves. But what if that I'm able to allow them to make a boundary based on what I've learned about this person? I could still make that boundary and forgive them. They are forgiven. This is tricky for another person to understand because they may not understand why you're placing boundaries if you forgive them. And that's what this client was telling me. She's like, what do you mean? You mean I can kind of start making boundaries, emotional boundaries and physical boundaries with my parent, even if I forgive them. And I'm like, absolutely. Absolutely. Please use what you know. I don't want you to think that forgiving and forgetting is the process. That's not really what is meant, I think, by this statement. Forgiving and forgetting is impossible. But forgiving and understanding, now that is something I can live out. Forgiving and understanding. And also in return, or as an outcome, making sure that I protect myself with what I know. There's nothing wrong with you doing that. There's nothing wrong with you saying, okay, I've been betrayed by this parent multiple times and I've had this information about them, and now I'm going to make a boundary. For example, a simple boundary would be, I won't talk about these specific topics with that parent because I know they will judge them. And my need for approval will just make me more resentful and more angry. So I will drop down my expectations here, and I will make sure that I adjust them to what this person can and cannot do, or what they can and cannot handle. So when I learned something about this individual, to include my family, to include people that I love, I've learned that you just don't talk about certain things with them because they're going to have an opinion, a strong one, and it might interfere with how I think, and it might cause a conflict. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to protect them from that and protect myself. I will not talk about these things because I know I have a need for approval. And if they don't tell me what I want to hear, I will lose my mind. Another thing is, like, let's say you have a friend that may have done something that was significant, maybe they meant to not harm you at all, but in the outcome of it, they did harm. Now, you cannot change this person. And even if you communicate it to them, you already learned what they're capable of doing skill-wise and not capable of doing. And that's why you have to take the next step. And the next step may not be something they agree with. The other person doesn't have to agree with the boundary you're about to make. So forgiving is easier from a place of, I need to also protect myself. Now, I'm not doing this from resentment, but I'm doing this from what I've learned, right? I know that this person is capable of responding this way. And if they get upset or don't get what they want, they will respond this way. And so this results in me having to make that boundary based on what I know. So no matter what this other person says about what their intentions are, and that's good. And I know their intentions were not to harm me, but I can't help but see what I have seen. So forgiving at that point would be about letting go of the resentment, dealing with the situation and with this person, because I realize I'm capable of doing the same as well. And they may have done this thing. That would include a friend, a parent, a partner. They've done this thing. And I don't want to hold the resentment. So we are going to release the resentment, but still make the boundary. Because if we don't make the boundary and we reconcile with them in the same way because we forgive them, this will just be, it's a delusion, basically. This forgiveness is almost based off of the hope or the delusion that they didn't do whatever they did. And that's just going to result in future resentments and disappointment because I did not heed the warning as it came. So thank you for the client that kind of brought this up. Is it possible for me to forgive someone and make a boundary? Yes, we don't reconcile with them on the same way we did before they've done whatever it is that they've done that may have not been in alignment with what we want in a relationship. So yes, absolutely. We can let it go and we could treat them with kindness, never talk negatively about them. The future response will not be to harm them or talk about them in any negative way. But there is an outcome for what I know about them today. I have to do something about that. If I don't, then I am not learning. I'm not learning. Hence, I'm saying that forgiveness is reconciliation and it's quick reconciliation, and that's not accurate. This will just, again, result in the person showing you their skill set once more and what they're capable and not capable of doing because I did not protect myself. Now I'm really going to get even more resentful. So we nip this at the bud. We start to see things that are hard to see about a situation or a person, and we accept its presence. Now, accepting doesn't mean I have to agree with it. I just have to accept its presence. So people say, well, no, I accept. And I'm like, no. I mean, accept the raw information as it is. This person, they were disloyal in some way. I can't unsee that. Once it's seen, I cannot unsee that. I have to accept its presence. I have to see it accurately. Now, I know that this person did not mean to harm me, but the outcome of it was harmful. Hence, I have to trust what I know is that I cannot trust that they will be looking out for our interaction for the highest good. They might just be self-serving. That's okay, you guys. If a person is at the self-preservation point, they're allowed to be there. But I'm also allowed to make a boundary and know that. I don't have to completely invest in them the way that I used to invest in them. You can reduce your investment in them so you can protect yourself from future interaction with that person, because they might get upset or they might get displeased with something, and then their response might not be as kind. So it's okay for you to protect yourself. So this way it never has to get there again with this person. Please use what you learn. Please use what you learn about the person and the situation. We've all experienced this. If we're honest with ourselves, we've all been disloyal to someone, protective with someone. We all may have betrayed someone in some way. What that only means at the most basic level is that I was self-preserving. I just kind of was looking out for myself. That's what it really means. It doesn't mean that I was trying to harm the other person, but I was just trying to preserve myself. I was just looking out for myself. And that's the harsh truth to accept, is that this person was not trying to harm me. I was not trying to harm someone, but I was looking out for myself. And in me doing so, unfortunately, I did not see the hurt I may have caused another. Again, all of this is acceptable. I've been on the other side myself. I've been at a place where I hurt someone not meaning to, but because I come from a past, I was self-preserving. So the other person is allowed to be exactly where they're at, and I'm allowed to be exactly where I'm at, and we accept the situation as is. We see it accurately, but instead of saying forgiving and forgetting, which is only going to result in more disappointment, we're going to say forgiving and learning. Forgiving and learning. So we use the past information to make sure that we make the new boundaries, to make sure that we adjust our expectation as well as our investment in this person and in that situation. We don't just go back in there as in like forgetting, I'm using air quotes, forgetting. We don't forget what was seen and learned and experienced, because that would be delusional and it would only again result in disappointment. What we do is we adjust. We realize that, hey, even if it hurts me or hurts the other person, I got to make those boundaries out of love, out of caring and affection. And it's not to harm anybody, but the other person may not agree with the boundary I'm about to make and the little investment I'm about to put towards them based on what I've learned. Now, I will not shove that in their face. I will not tell them, well, you are the reason why I respond this way. I will just simply start to engage in my boundary and reduce my investment and adjust my expectations accordingly based on what I've learned. And they are going to kind of have a hard time with it because they're not getting what they used to get. And they might attack verbally. They might argue. They might attempt to convince that I did not see what I saw. But in fact, I saw what I saw. And I've learned what I've learned. I cannot unlearn it and unsee it. It just can't happen. I wish it could. I really wish it could. But I've learned from my past that if I don't take the information I've learned and I keep going back to that situation, that person with the same investment and the same expectations after what I've learned about them that may have disappointed me, that means I'm not learning. And I'm going to put them in harm's way by me expecting the same expectations, at which point they're going to disappoint me again because their skill set, they're going to disappoint me. And it's just going to, again, result in more and more resentment, a deeper resentment that I can't get out of anymore because I've invested so much in this person with the hope, and this is my selfish part, right? With the hope that the outcome would be different. So please understand that when I forgive a person and forget, it's not a kind thing because I want everything to be the same. I have this expectation that they've learned their lesson. I have the expectation that they've all of a sudden fixed their skill set and then now they've learned. And like I'm doing all this storytelling in my head when I really am lying to myself. I'm really lying to myself. The truth is people don't change that quickly. And that's okay. and it stays as it lays. We don't want to take this person back too quickly, knowing what we know, because what we're doing is just, what we're responding to is a true fear of abandonment, especially when it's dealing with another person. We're responding to a true fear of abandonment, that I gotta forgive and forget. Now that's only self-serving. It's serving me, not them, because I don't want to see them in pain when I start to make boundaries, and I don't know if I can enforce boundaries. So I'll go ahead and forget, but then it will just result to the same old outcome, because I did not adjust my expectations. And again, I did not adjust my investment towards them and towards the interaction or the relationship. I hope you guys really take this to heart. Instead of having the perception of I forgive and forget, now we're going to change it to forgiving and learning. It's forgiven. It's forgiven. But in order for me to prevent any future resentment towards this person, I'm going to protect them from themselves and protect myself as well, which they might be offended at, because now I have to make the boundary with them. But it's the highest good for all. And one day, they may not understand it from where they're standing right now, but eventually they will understand that it was done for the highest good. They may not have gotten what they wanted, but it was done for the highest good. And that's important. And that's important. Yeah, we cannot unsee, no matter how much this person explains. There's situations that we cannot unsee what they've done, what they've said, what I've experienced with them. We cannot unsee it. We cannot forget it. We can't. And that's allowed to happen. That's why we have memory. Now, we don't go against memory. We need to make sure we integrate it. We can't forgive and forget, but we could forgive and protect ourselves and that person and learn from what we know. And that's allowed to happen in the most gentlest, kindest way. We don't shove that in their face. We don't tell them, look, you're the reason why I have to do this. They're not the only reason. I'm the reason as well. I've learned and I've seen what this interaction can do. I know my part and I know their part. And the wisest thing to do is where, from our skill set, both to interrupt the investment in that relationship and the interaction in that relationship and place a boundary. And that's what may have to happen at times. So I want us to understand this better. So this way we're going into forgiveness from a new perspective, a new understanding. And we're not carrying a resentment that continues to deteriorate me. Now, I want everybody to know, just like I said in the beginning, we are not perfect. That means at one point, if I'm being very honest, I was also self-preserving with someone. It may not have been this person in particular, but I have been self-preserving. I have hurt someone unintentionally. And in me doing so, this person had to create a boundary with me. If you're being very honest, you will know this person had to create a boundary with you as well. So let's say I was a negative person and I was judgmental, and this other person that was a friend discovered that about me, and they just kind of started to push themselves away from me. I earned that, friends. I earned that. I'm glad that friend pushed themselves away, because I've learned that they showed me that I was not in a healthy state, and being around me was something that went against their boundaries, because they wanted to protect themselves as well, because I wasn't looking out for them. And that's okay. Again, it's allowed to happen. And if we're being honest with ourselves, we've been on the other side too. We've been on the other side. That helps us implement more humility in the situation, that we don't need to hold a resentment, because I've done it myself. How can I hold a resentment on someone when I've done it myself? And if I'm being honest, I've done it myself in some form where I was self-preserving. I may not have done it to the extent that they've done it, but I've done it before. I understand them. I'm not that distant away from them. I know why they would have done it, why they would have unintentionally hurt someone that they love or care about. I don't disregard the fact that they might care and love me, but they still did this thing that they did. Just the same way I have also done it to another person, where I might have cared or loved them, but I may have self-preserved in my actions and looked out for myself instead of the highest good for all. I've done it. And if you're honest with yourself, you've done it too. So holding a resentment from that place is impossible for me when I know I am what I'm looking at. I can't help it. I am exactly what I'm looking at. But just like boundaries in a healthy way has been done towards me, right? Somebody stopped their investment towards me because of the way I behaved or responded. I can't make them unsee it. Today, I bend the knee And I realize that they've seen these things about me and I can't make them unsee it. And it's eating humble pie, maybe eating the whole damn pie bakery because you'll lose friends along the way with the way you respond and behave and your self-preservation. And that's what I did as well. So I think it's okay to respect and say that, when I'm betrayed or when something has gone very unkind towards me from another person, instead of going to extremes, which is let me hold on to that grudge because I would never have done that to someone, or the other extreme one, like let's forgive and forget for the basis of just reconciling real quick. How about this? Both those are extreme and they're toxic and they're delusional. The reality is like, okay, they've done this thing. And I know I've done something like that before. I might have harmed someone without meaning to, but I cannot unsee what I saw. And I need to learn from that thing that I saw. So again, for me to not hold on to that resentment and to forgive real quick, that would be the thing I would do. I would level the playing field with what I'm looking at. That means I've done it before. And I would implement a boundary to make sure that, okay, now I've learned that this person is going to self-preserve in this area. Now, what is the thing I want to do with that knowledge? What is it that I want to adjust, whether it's my expectations or my investment towards them or towards this interaction or relationship? This is what I must do. It's allowed to happen. And they're allowed to fight back and say, you're being unfair. You're being ugly or unkind. How dare you? And they might shove other things in my face and all this it's allowed to happen. They don't have to agree with the boundary I'm making to protect myself. But eventually I am doing it for the highest good. It is for the highest good because I don't want to harm them anymore by having these grand expectations of them when I know they're not going to perform. And it's going to result in me arguing with them and fighting with them again. And being disappointed again. And it's just going to get me angrier and angrier and angrier. No, ma'am. No, sir. I don't want to do that anymore. So accepting the truths, the harsh truths as they are, accepting my part, accepting that I'm imperfect as well, and that I would have acted in the same way at one point. So I know their humanity well, but I also have to learn from what I've seen. I hope this is hammered in there and that you guys are on the road to forgiveness of others. I have an episode on forgiving the self, but this is about forgiveness of others. And I've done past episodes on that, but it's just never enough, ladies and gentlemen. And I think I'm doing it just differently every time. But yeah, and we do this with humility. We do this work with humility. Even if the other person disagrees, we still love them and care about them and want the best for them and wish them well. But I'm allowed to make boundaries based on what I've learned. Thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. And I'm sending you love and light. Louis Dudek said, "What is forgiven is usually well remembered." This has been an episode of Drive-thru.